Hey, it's Chuck Armstrong with Loudwire Nights, and this is Loudwire Nights On Demand. Slash was back with us talking about his new solo album, talking about his summer tour, and also talking about what it's like giving everything up to pursue rock and roll. This conversation first aired on Monday, June 17th. I hope you dig this one. A couple of months ago, when Slash announced plans for his latest solo album, Orgy of the Damned, and released its lead single, Killing Floor, with Brian Johnson and Steven Tyler, we had the privilege to hang with him, hearing all about the collaboration and how that took shape. Well, since then, Orgy of the Damned, it has come out. Fans have been eating it up. Slash has already played a couple of acoustic sets in preparation for the big Serpent Festival tour, which kicks off on July 5th in Montana. And I'm happy to say, yeah, that's right, Slash is back on the show, hanging with us tonight. Slash, thanks so much for being here, man.
Hey, man, it's great to be here. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm better talking to you now, so all good. Listen, you've been very open about putting this record together after Guns toured last year. You've got your friends all helping out with these different songs, from Brian Johnson and Steven Tyler to Chris Robinson to Demi Lovato to Billy Gibbons, on and on and on. You finally released this album full of blues covers, a tribute to the blues that have been such a big influence on you for so long. How are you feeling, man? How's it feel to have some distance from putting this together, releasing it, and being here now?
I'm still in the trenches, because we actually recorded the album a year ago, and it was during the Guns tour. So we had 3 weeks off. So I had 2 weeks to get the songs together, a week to record it, and then back on the road. And then it was during that time that some of the vocals were done. Some of them were done live in the studio, and then other ones were done at different times. So I've been waiting all this time for the record to come out. I had to finish the Guns tour, and then there was also the Last Conspirators tour international tour that we just did. So I timed it so the release would be after that. So now that it's out, it's really cool because I hadn't heard it since then. I never listened to it.
Yeah.
And it's really cool that everybody's been so positive. It's been so well received. It's fun. But at the moment, I'm rehearsing, getting a set together to go out for the Serpent tour. So I'm still like knee deep. But we have the songs from the record, but then we have all these other cool tunes that we didn't record that we love. So we're putting those all together. There's some really cool covers that we're doing. So it's exciting, and we're having a lot of fun.
I love that, man. Well, and you could start seeing that fun come through, man. Like I mentioned, you did a couple of acoustic sets already in preparation for your summer tour in support of Orgy of the Damned. I was lucky enough to be at both of those. One of them was at the legendary Amoeba Music in Hollywood, and the second was with Radio in LA too. And it was at that set that someone asked you about Crossroads, which you covered with Gary Clark Jr. And the original, Robert Johnson, tied to one of the greatest rock and roll legends ever, that he sold his soul to the devil to play guitar the way he did. And when you heard that, when that got brought up, you got kind of deep, man. And you said, listen, that might be a myth, but there is some truth to the idea of giving it all up in order to pursue this dream. And you seem to really connect with that.
It's an interesting, I don't know what you call like myth or fable or whatever about Robert Johnson. Obviously it's very hard to believe that there was an actual exchange for a soul and the ability to play guitar. But man, was he a brilliant guitar player, almost otherworldly, right? Anyway, but I have to say that when you get into music, you give up everything else. I mean, it's just sort of like it's a commitment that you just, nothing else is as important and nothing else matters except for what you're going to do musically. And all you need is what it's going to help support that. And it's an interesting transition that you make in your life when you just sort of like your brain changes and nothing else is of any significance except for your instrument and going out and doing whatever you're going to do with it. And it happens, and it's not necessarily it's not like a written rule that you have to do that. It's just something that naturally at least happened for me,
How old were you when you kind of got to that realization, man? Yeah.
Literally, it was when I turned 15. Because I picked up the guitar roughly on my birthday. It was that summer of what was that? 1979 to 80. Right. And I'd been going to music festivals. I was really into a lot of records and a lot of music at that time. And it was all a huge new discovery thing for me, all these new bands and all these records that I hadn't heard before. And there was a lot of cool stuff coming out at that time too. And anyway, and then so I got turned on to the guitar and I had my birthday, and then I at that moment I picked up the guitar and everything else fell away. And at the time I was actually racing BMX and I just turned pro, and that was, and I was going to do that, and then I was going to become a actual motocross racer. That was my aspirations at the time. And then I picked up a guitar and everything sort of fell away. I forgot about all of that. And then school took a dive too. But anyway, yeah. So I can appreciate that, the idea of selling your soul, to be
Yeah.
able to.
So you had been listening to the music, you had been seeing the music, but it wasn't until you physically picked up that guitar where you started realizing like, oh, this is it.
Yeah. Before that, I was just a big music fan, you know. Music really spoke to me all my life up to that point. But the idea of picking up an instrument and doing it just never occurred to me.
Nah,
The
I love that,
fantasy
man.
of rock star hadn't happened.
I love that. Listen, not talking about selling your soul, but I am curious about. I have a guitar question. So one of my favorite tracks on Orgy of the Damned, I think it's my favorite actually, is the Fleetwood Mac cover. Oh well, with Chris Stapleton singing. And one of the reasons I love it is personal because it was one of the first riffs I ever learned. And so to this day, if I pick up an acoustic guitar, I will. I'll just start
Play
jamming
that.
that. Yeah, because it's such a fun riff.
Such a great riff. I mean, like if there was a top 10 or top 20 of guitar riffs, it's in there, you
It's got
know.
to be, man. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and another reason I love it too, not just because of the riff, but because Peter Green, anything he touches, man, such a legendary guitarist. And he
We're gonna
had,
do the full version when we play this live. We're gonna do the extended. I almost was gonna record it, and I thought, nah. But for the live for the tour, we're gonna add that whole tag at the end.
yeah. I mean, listen, that's made for that, man. Just a jam on stage. That's amazing. One of the other reasons I love it is because of Peter Green's guitar, right? The legendary '59 Les Paul, known as Greenie. And so I'm curious, and not to get too in the weeds in it, but Kirk Hammett bought that guitar. He plays it on the road. As I've heard the legend, he spent a hefty chunk of change on it. You being such a Gibson Les Paul guy, and me hearing you do this version of Oh Well, did you ever were you ever in discussion to buy Greenie?
No, I didn't know it was for sale. Otherwise, I'm actually very jealous of Kirk because of that. I did a thing with Kirk. Kirk had one of his horror exhibits up in Northern California some years ago. And so I went up there and hung out with him, and he had Greenie with him, and I got to see it in person for the first time. And it was just one of those, like, God, if I known, I would have tried to have gotten that guitar too, because it was Peter Green's, and then it was Gary Moore's, obviously, and it's just got a great legacy to it. But Kirk's awesome. If there's anybody that should have it, it's him. So it's all good. But yeah, what an awesome fucking guitar to have.
Are there other like guitars in your world, that you think like, man, that's like a white whale. If I could put that on my wall, if I could get that in my room.
Well, to tell you the truth, I mean, when it comes to guitars, I've been turned on to a lot of what you call legacy guitars that were owned by famous musicians, and it's actually there's a huge amount of like Rory Gallagher's guitar. I remember seeing that in Ireland at one point. There's Jimi Hendrix's Strat, one of Jimi Hendrix's Strats that somebody brought to me one time, and there's a couple other BB King's guitars. And I actually never really feel like I want to own them. It's nice to be able to see them. And I think probably, all things considered with Greenie, it might have been that was sort of like borderline. That's something that you might want to have. But the guitar that I always wanted, that I always really coveted was Joe Perry's Les Paul, which interestingly enough, I ended up with. And I had it, and it had that sort of feel of being somebody else's instrument. And I only used it a few times, and I kept it in the case and didn't really do much with it. And I had it for years, and then finally gave it back to Joe because I think felt like that's who really rightfully it belonged to. So all things considered, I'm not out looking for other people's guitars. I'm busy just trying to find guitars that sound really good that I can use, and also ones that aren't extremely valuable because they're still just a piece of wood. They break. I mean, you have to go through a lot of effort to break a Les Paul, but they break, they get stolen, they get caught in fires, this and that and the other. It's the idea that you have to insure them for X amount of dollars to make sure that you get the value out of them if something should happen to them. That all bothers me. I just like a good sounding guitar. That, not to say that I don't have a couple vintage, but I'm not out there like seeking them out all the time.
No, I get that, man, and I love too just hearing that, like when you got Joe Perry's guitar, like you could kind of sense something, and it makes me think about you being a 15-year-old and just picking up a guitar and sensing something, and that supernatural, selling your soul to the devil or whatever that might be. Like there is something that is, you can't quite put your finger on it, you can't really quantify it, but there is something that exists through the music, through the guitars over history.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. There's definitely an aura. And I guess it comes with all the sort of, I hate to get all cosmic, but all that spiritual and creative energy that goes into this piece of sort of what you consider an inanimate object, but it's organic. And over time, there's got to be something about that gives a little bit of magic, right?
Absolutely, man. And, Slash, here we are, celebrating new music from you, but also just a couple of weeks ago, we gave away a guitar, a Slash Les Paul, autographed by Slash, just really incredible. And so it's cool too to see that as the generations move on, for people to be coveting a Slash guitar too, and to try to be picking up on that aura with one of your guitars.
It's actually super flattering and humbling, and it's actually sort of hard for me to imagine myself in that place where people are trying to get my stuff. And I trade stuff all the time, and there's some guys out there that have really great guitars that will bend over backwards to get one of the guitars that I've been using for a while, and I'm like going, well, I guess I'm not using it, and I really want that one, so I'll trade it. And they're like, yeah, thank you. And I'm like, really? It's that big a deal? It's very flattering.
Slash, I've got a couple guitars behind me, man. I'd be happy to trade if you want, man.
What do you got?
I got a Gibson Flying V that I love, man, and it's all black, gothic. And
I got a black one too.
And then I've got an SG. I have a Les Paul. They're such heavy guitars, man. And like you said, it takes a lot to break a Les Paul, but man, it takes a lot to just wear one and run around on stage too.
I think that's one of the things that I love about guitars is they're very sturdy, dense, kind of solid feeling things. Strats are very flimsy if they fly all over the place. And I use really heavy strings, so I think muscling through it is sort of my way of doing this.
All right, Slash, I know we're running out of time and we're just scratching the surface, man, but what's on the horizon? You've got the Serpent Tour, all in support of Orgy of the Damned this summer. What's coming after that for you?
Going into the studio with the Conspirators, getting a new record done. And then after that, 2025 is all about Guns N' Roses. So, trying to get some things going with that. I think there's going to be a small tour in the summertime next year. I heard rumor about that. Anyway, so yeah, that's going to be focused on that. But prior to that, it's the Serpent Tour and then the Conspirators record.
Awesome. You always stay busy, man.
Yeah. It keeps me out of trouble, as they say.
Slash, thank you so much for hanging, man. You are welcome on Loudwire Nights anytime. Hopefully we can hang again soon, brother.
I'm sure we will. All right, man. Have a good one. See you, Chuck.
That wraps up this episode of Loudwire Nights on Demand. Stay caught up with everything happening in the world of rock and metal on the Loudwire app and at loudwire.com.